This video is sponsored by Squarespace. I heard this rumor recently about a secret editor hidden inside Blender that makes animation way easier, and I found out on a forum that someone nearby knows all about it. I've been having trouble making characters walk and gesture at the same time, and apparently this secret editor just lets you mix them together and can even help you start and stop walk cycles. I think it's called animation layers, like the thing that Maya users talk about. This must be it. Hello?
Who dares wake the wizard of animation layers? I have buried myself deep within Blender for eons, and now you wish to reveal me? Don't you understand my power? You should be cowering in my presence. Your mind will shatter at the sight of it. I will modify the entirety of your keyframes. I will manipulate time as I please. I will mix all of your actions together at my whim.
What?
I have been found out.
What's going on here? Is animation layers even real?
Well, kind of, but I really can't do all those things I said. You can do it with the NLA editor. But people hate it so much, so I thought maybe people would listen if I called it the animation layers instead.
Oh. Well, can you show me?
Yeah, sure. Here's the documentation.
Well, thanks. I'm gonna go and, I'm gonna read this. In Blender, you can save pieces of animation as actions, and the NLA editor, or nonlinear animation editor, lets you take those actions and put them together, kind of like how you would with a video editor. You can layer multiple actions on top of each other to combine them, you can put them one after another and transition between them, and you can change the speed of actions, loop them as many times as you want, or add a modifier to lower the frame rate. This sounds like a dream come true for animators, but chances are you either haven't heard of it, or you do know about it and you hate it. So why is that? Well, the NLA editor gets a bad rap for having a convoluted workflow, a confusing UI, and overall just being poorly designed. And to this I say that I kind of agree. But Blender also thinks this, and they're working on redesigning it to make it easier to use. There was even a lecture about it at the last Blender conference. But please don't wait to learn the NLA editor just because it's changing, because we don't know how long that will take, the concepts involved will still be the same, and we already have something that works, and it's pretty easy once you get used to it. Plus, if you don't like it, you can try the animation layers add-on that makes the UI a little more like how it is in Maya. Anyway, I'll show everything I know about the NLA editor, as well as examples of how it can be used and workflow ideas. To get these action strips into the NLA editor, we have to make some actions first. To do that, go to the dope sheet and set this to action editor. From here, you can animate something, give it a name, and now this is an action that you can use in the NLA editor. If you want to make more than one, then press the shield icon to save it, then you can duplicate it with this button, or press X and make a new action. I'll just make a quick walk cycle and a little dance for now. If you somehow made it to this video without knowing how to animate at all, I have some videos over here to help you get started, and this character is free to download on Gumroad. To turn this into a strip, press push down in the action editor, or this button over here. Now you can click and drag or press G to move it around, S to scale, which will also change the speed, Y to split the clip at the playhead, and Shift D to duplicate. If you want to edit a strip, just open it up in the action editor, or you can select it and press Tab. When you're done, press Tab again, but make sure you're hovering over the NLA editor, because if you press Tab over here, you might accidentally lock some of these channels. You can also select a track over here, hover over the timeline and press Shift A, and it'll let you add an action to that track. And you can add more tracks by selecting one and pressing Shift A while hovering over this area. You can also reorder the tracks by right-clicking and using the track ordering option, or you can use the page up and page down keys as shortcuts. Is this making sense so far? If you're already overloaded with information, remember you can check these menus up here to see what options are available and to learn some shortcuts. You can also right-click to add them to your quick favorites. This lets you use Q to access them, and this changes for each editor, so you can have different quick favorites while you're modeling or whatever. Alright, press N or drag this arrow to open the side panel, and when you have a strip selected, you'll get way more options. You can change the speed in here, change the strip length, make actions repeat a bunch of times, but the two big settings to learn about are extrapolation and blending. Hold means that it will hold the first keyframes before the strip, and hold the last keyframes after it ends. This is the first pose in the action, so anything before will just hold that pose. There's also hold forward and nothing. I'll set this to nothing for now. Blending is set to replace, which means it's replacing any action that is below it. So as soon as the dance starts, the walk cycle is completely replaced. And this is all layer based, so strips on the top replace the strips below it. The order you place them matters, just like other layer based programs like Photoshop or DaVinci Resolve. I'll talk more about this later, but you can use this blend in and out options to make it replace more gradually. An important thing to understand is that actions will only interact with each other if they use the same bones. The walk and the dance are all using the same bones, so one will completely replace the other. But if we make another action that uses different bones, like in the face, then they won't replace each other. This means that if you plan on using the NLA editor, it's important to only insert keyframes on the bones that you want to use. If you want to select the bones that are keyframed, open up an action and turn off the Only Show Selected option. Now all the keyframes will be shown whether the bones are selected or not, and you can select the bones by hovering over this side and pressing A. This only works for visible bones though, so unhide bones with Alt-H first, and make sure you don't have hidden bone collections. This can be helpful for troubleshooting or deleting some tracks if you have bones conflicting with each other. It would be nice if there was a button for this, maybe in the select menu, but there isn't. When blending is set to combine, it tries to mix the actions together. This doesn't usually work well for pre-made actions like the walk and the dance, as you can see, but combine is very powerful when you're building actions in the NLA editor. So I'll make a new action, and you can see that this gets highlighted and the name of our action is up here. It's not a strip yet, but this means that it's interacting with the other strips in the NLA editor. If you click it, we can change the blending mode to combine. Now I can basically start editing this walk cycle. I can lift one of the arms and insert a keyframe, or I can rotate the hips. So you can see it isn't just replacing the keyframes, we still have some motion from the walk cycle. If I push this down to make it a strip, I can turn it on and off. So this is really nice when you want to layer things up in the NLA editor. I don't have to change the keyframes in the walk cycle if I want to make a person walk and wave at someone. One thing to understand about how combine works is that it's trying to check how far away the bones are from the rest pose. So if I disable the other actions and make an action that's just a rest pose and set it to combine, when I turn everything back on, it looks like it's not interacting with the walk below. If I set it to replace, then it will just hold the rest pose. If I make this animate from the rest pose and then go up and then back to the rest pose, when I turn everything back on, we have the walk all by itself. Then the hand goes up, and then it goes back to just the walk cycle. So if you remember this, then it becomes easier to add things to existing animations. I like to use this method to add subtle idle motion by starting with a rest pose and making the head, the hips, and the hands bob up and down a little, and then I can put it on top of other actions. Like, these gestures are pretty rigid on their own, but it looks a little more natural with this movement on top. I also use this for lip syncing to add facial expressions like smiling or making the mouth wide without overwriting the lip sync. Sorry, what was that? This isn't enough and you want to see the character move? And combine is also good for editing motion capture data if you want to do something like make the arm stick out wider. There are also the add, subtract, and multiply blending modes, but I don't really use them. All I can say is if you try them out, be careful keyframing scale because the default scale is 1, so if you add 2 actions together and you have scale keyframed, then everything is going to get bigger. Alright, like I said, there are these blend in and out options where you can set the amount of frames it takes to transition from one action to another. You can tell by the shape that the timing is always linear, so if you want easing, you can use this animated influence option. When you turn it on, it will insert a keyframe at the start of the clip, so if you want to get rid of it or move it, that's where it will be. It's kind of annoying, but it can't be seen in the action editor, so you have to go back to the dope sheet, the timeline, or the graph editor to see these keyframes. Anyway, with the influence slider, you can have more control over how strong an action is, and you can also keyframe it if you want easing or something more complex than the automatic blending option. I usually just make actions overlap to add transitions, but you can also keep some space between the strips, select them both, and press Shift-T, or add a transition from the Add menu. I don't think this works that well, but you can use it if you want to. Later on, I'll show how to make custom transitions between actions instead of this automatic approach. The frames start and end change how long the strip is, but it's not changing the speed or anything. This is good for if you only want part of an action to show, or if you made a looping action that uses the cycle modifier, you can make the strip longer to make it continue looping. You can use the E shortcut for this, but it also changes the speed. If the playhead is on top of the strip, then you can move the endpoints from either side. If you press tab to edit the strip, it will reset to the original length unless you uncheck this sync button under action clip. And if you want to reset it, just press the button next to it. Remember this if you split a clip in half with Y and want to reset it to its original length sometime later. There are a few ways to change the speed or timing, one of which is animated strip time, which lets you keyframe the speed of an action. With this, you're setting the frame of the action, so if you want it to play normal speed, you can set this to 1 on the first frame and 100 on frame 100. Select the frames in the graph editor, press T, and set this to linear. So this is normal speed, but if you want, you could make the last keyframe a different value to make it slower or faster. You could change the interpolation to make it start slow, get fast in the middle, and then slow down, or you can add multiple keyframes to do whatever you want. For some reason, you can't see changes when moving this slider unless you press play or move to a different frame. So keep that in mind if you use it and it seems like nothing is happening, you can just press the spacebar to start playing. That's the most complex way to change the speed, but you can also change the playback scale over here. You can press S to scale a strip over here, and it always scales from the playhead. There's a reverse button up here, which, makes it play backwards. And you can also change how many times the strip repeats over here. You can also change the action that the strip uses by changing this if you want to do that for some reason. There's this other tab for modifiers, which is pretty much the same as the one in the graph editor, except it adds it to the whole strip. These honestly aren't that useful in my opinion, other than stepped interpolation, which basically lowers the frame rate. This could be good for making some characters look like stop motion animation, while having camera movement or other elements use the default frame rate. Noise seems like it would be useful, but it adds the same noise to every keyframe, including the scale, so everything pushes in the same direction. If you want noise, you'll have more control using the modifier in the graph editor. Now, this isn't in the side panel, but we should probably talk about baking. If you want, you can bake all of the actions in the NLA editor into a single action. I think some people use this for exporting to other programs, but it's also nice if you want to add the stepped interpolation modifier to everything. Go to the strip menu and choose Bake Action, or you can press F3 and search for it. I usually uncheck only selected bones so that all of the bones are baked. Choose the frame range and press OK. Then we can push this down and it just sits on top and replaces everything below it, but as you can see, it didn't delete anything, so you can still move the strips around and rebake it if you need to. I use this bake option whenever I use the Wiggle Bones add-on, except I only bake the Wiggle Bones.
Now that you're spending all your time learning about animation, do yourself a favor and save some time making a website with Squarespace. I threw this website together in an afternoon without having used Squarespace before. There are a bunch of templates to choose from so you can get started fast, and then you can change the style to make it more your own. You can add different elements and whole sections quickly with their fluid engine, which lets you drag and drop things wherever you want and make them as big or small as you want. And when you switch to mobile, it already works fine, but if you want, you can customize placement in mobile view too. If you want an even easier setup option, try out Squarespace Blueprint AI and SEO tools, which guides you through the website making process, helping you place sections and text, and makes sure your website will show up more often to more people. Before I started learning Blender, I was actually learning how to make websites from scratch, and if you don't believe me, check my first 2 public videos.
Hello everybody, it's Joey again.
I know what it takes to put a website together and get it online, so believe me when I say Squarespace will save you time and money. And if you are the type of person that wants to learn CSS, they let you add custom codes so you can truly make things look however you want. Use it to make a simple website where all your links live, make a portfolio, a landing page for a business, or maybe a webcomic or blog. So check out Squarespace for a free trial, and when you're ready to go public, use my link squarespace.com/JoeyCarlino to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.
All right, let's talk a little about workflow and examples of how you can use all of this. The way I see it, there are 2 main workflows, and I tend to use both of them. One is treating it like a video game. You can make a bunch of separate actions that stand on their own, like an idle animation, punch, kick, whatever. You set them to replace, and then you blend between them. This is nice for things like walk cycles that you can make ahead of time and then use them in multiple situations. The other workflow is deliberately layering things up within the NLA editor. You might start with an animation that works on its own, but then you put other actions above it that are set to combine that are specifically made to work together. This is good for when you want a character to do more than one thing at once, like walk and talk and make gestures. And it's good for adding subtle movements like how I showed with the bobbing idle animation, adding shaking to an existing animation, or maybe showing two things interact like a ball hitting somebody in the head. You can also use actions that use separate bone groups and layer those up. I use this workflow regularly for my videos where I put the lip sync as its own action strip, and then the hand gestures, and sometimes I'll put face expressions or some other action. I like doing this to stay organized so I know that certain body parts live in these strips. And again, remember that these strips only interact with each other if the same bones are animated. So if you want the hands in their own layer, then only put keyframes on the hand bones. So I've seen a bunch of walk cycle tutorials on YouTube, but I've never seen one where someone shows how to animate into or out of a walk cycle. So this is how I would do it. Say for instance, I want a character to walk over to a chair and sit down. First, you make a walk cycle, obviously. Then in its own action, you can make the body move where you want it to go. I usually animate the whole armature in object mode, but you can move the root in pose mode also. Then you can make sure the feet aren't slipping too much by adjusting the speed of the walk cycle or the movement of the body. But if you have to change it too much, then it might make more sense to make a run cycle or a slower walk cycle. Then at the beginning, make a new action. This is going to be a custom transition going into the walk cycle. I like to go 10 or so frames into the body movement action, and move the walk cycle to a point where the feet are close to the rest position. Then insert keyframes so that the end of this action is the beginning of the walk cycle. Where the body movement starts, I'll add a rest pose, but I don't want the foot to move, so you can either line it up by eye or use the Copy World Space add-on that is built into Blender. Just turn it on in the preferences and it appears in the end panel under Item. So go to the last keyframe, copy the world space, go to the rest pose, paste it, and insert a keyframe. If the feet are still slipping, then it's probably because the body movement has some easing to it. You can set the body and the foot to linear, but if you want to keep the easing, then you can paste the world space and insert a keyframe for each frame of this transition. And turning auto keying on makes this a little faster. Just remember to turn it off when you're done. So now it should go from a rest pose into the walk cycle, and if you want, you can add frames in between to make it look a little more natural. Sometimes I'll mute this strip and copy some of the bones from the walk cycle, like the head and the hands, and then you can just paste it in and, insert keyframes for those. And it's the same process at the end. Make a new action, figure out where you want the transition to start. It could even be the last frame if you want. Make that the first pose of this transition, and have it lead into a pose of sitting in the chair. I added another pose in the middle to make it look more natural, and also made the feet move one at a time. If you want to go the extra mile, you can animate the face in a separate action, and remember that these strips only interact with each other if the same bones are keyframed. Imagine doing all of this in one action now. You'd have to copy-paste the walk cycle until you wanted it to stop. If you wanted to transition from the middle of the cycle, you'd have to add a keyframe and it could potentially throw off the timing that you set up. And if you decide that you want to change the speed or where the transition points are, then you have to redo a lot of the work that you did. In my opinion, the NLA editor makes all of this way easier. So yes, Blender does have animation layers. It's just not really called that. I know it's not the best with its weird shortcuts, inconsistencies, and strange workflow, but it makes animating so much smoother for me, and I want other people to know how much potential it has. And when Blender updates it, it'll be even better, and you'll already understand all of the concepts. So, thanks for watching. I have to go return this now. Hello, here's your stuff back. Thank you.
Oh hey, did you hear that Blender is working on a new NLA editor?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's cool, huh? Hey, do you want to hang out for a bit?
Sorry, I actually have some things to do. I'm kind of busy.
I got a lot of games.
Wow, that's crazy.